Welcome, Gunrunner.
Hello everybody, Kieran aka The Laird here, and I'm back with a book review for you. And this is a follow-up in more ways than one actually to a previous videos, because it's part of an ongoing series that I've been looking at on this channel, which is these Hardcore Gaming 101 Presents arcade classics books. In fact, Hardcore Gaming 101 Presents in general, in a way, because I've looked at obviously some arcade books like the Data East one, the first Sega one, and I also looked at a book about beat 'em ups as well. And and I've been really enjoying these Hardcore Gaming 101 books, so I'm going to keep on buying them. And I did actually say in a previous video that I'd already bought quite a few that I hadn't looked at, like I've got a Taito one as well, which I'm going to look at in due course. But as I looked at the Sega Arcade Classics Volume 1 last time out, I thought it was most sensible to look at the second volume this time out. So they follow on from each other. So, yeah. And I mentioned when I was obviously doing the first one that there was obviously loads of games that weren't in it. So there was obviously a lot of those are going to be, the obvious ones that you probably thought, why aren't they in their book, are going to be in this one, you'll find. But I do think this one, before I start, she's got a few more obscure ones in it than the first one, but I guess that was only kind of natural because you're going to cover the obvious ones first, I think. But again, we've got a lovely cover from Thor Valderson, who did the artwork. He did artwork for, I can't remember if it's EGM or Game Pro. It's one of the two back in the day anyway. And he still is involved in the retro gaming community doing artwork for various people, but most notably these brilliant Hardcore Gaming 101 books, as you can see. This lovely cover that has Sonic and friends. We've got Flicky there. The background looks like it's Zaxxon. Who else we got there? Pengo, of course, as well. So, not quite as packed as the cover for the first one, which sort of was overloaded with references to different games. This one's a bit simpler in design, but still very nice. But the back is even more nice, I think. I think the back cover is even better than the front cover, actually, because we've got this Congo Bongo kind of montage, really. Obviously, Sonic's in there as well, and we've got some Tetris. We've got Michael Jackson doing Moonwalker there, Bonanza Brothers. We've got Spider-Man up the top there. So, yeah, we've got some other stuff going on there. And I really like the way they've done that one. That back cover's absolutely brilliant. No description, just lovely artwork. We'll go back to that front cover for a minute. So yeah, we'll have a look. We'll have a look through this then and see what we've got in it, shall we? So there we go. So it opens up there. So this book says it was first published in May 2021. So I'm a bit behind the curve on picking these up, I guess, but I'm enjoying them nonetheless. So we've got our usual intro from Kurt Kalata, who was just the intro, is the main man behind Hardcore Gaming 101, excellent writer, and obviously a list of the other people who have contributed to the book. And there's the credit for Thor Valderson and the link to his website, which is thormeister.deviantart.com. So check out his art online because it's so good. He's such a talented artist. And there we have a table of contents. So picking out some of the games there, you can see Head On in there. You've got Zaxxon in there, Pengo, Teddy Boy. I'm just picking odd bits out. Hang On, Buck Rogers. Columns. Obviously, so there's still some pretty big name titles in there to look at, which we'll go into. It starts off with Head On, which is in many ways is credited as the first really big success for Sega, and it was because it was a very early title, and it was cloned to death, like Dodge 'em, for example, on the Atari 2600, and all sorts of other things, like they've put some of the clones in the screenshot comparisons there, so you can see those. But yeah, I mean, I think in many ways, Dodge 'em on the 2600 almost became a bit more famous than Head On as a rip-off, because it was a an early 2600 game that a lot of people had. Yeah, the game was cloned so much. And there's a brilliant sequel actually to Head On. Not Head On 2, because Head On 1 and 2 are basically the same game, but 2 adds a 2-player mode. They did a sequel called Pac-Ar, which is exclusive to the Sega SG-1000, which I looked at fairly recently on my channel, which is really good. Then we've got a little look at Sega Vector games. They've broken this down into a smaller section, because there's Eliminator and Zektor, which weren't very successful at all. Space Fury, which again wasn't very successful. Sega had big problems with their Vector games, and they made massive losses. It's an interesting story, worth looking into actually. Really big balls up. But the one really big successful one they did, of course, was Star Trek, which is a brilliant Star Trek strategic operations simulator. Got some great home ports as well, that game. And Tac-Scan up there, of course, which I think probably is best known for actually the Atari 2600 port, which is really good. I love Tac-Scan. I think it's a brilliant game. It's a shame we didn't give a bit more space to Star Trek and Tac-Scan in particular, actually, because especially Star Trek, it got loads of home ports. So it seems strange to give it just that half page, because there's other more obscure stuff in this book that gets a lot more space. So that's strange. Zaxxon, of course, very famous Sega game, with a lot of different home ports, including some rather strange ones like the 2600 and the television ports that put the ship in a sort of third person into the screen perspective instead of the isometric one due to hardware limitations. Though people did have a go at doing proper versions, like Space Raid have actually put it in there actually down there later on to prove that it could be done. There is of course Desert Falcon on the 2600 as well, which proves the isometric thing could be done if you programmed it right. But there's lots of the different versions there, and of course the 3D version for the Sega Master System as well, which again goes to the behind the ship, because that's the best way to simulate the 3D effect, obviously. Then we've got Zaxxon Mother Base. It's amazing that it took them so long to do a proper sequel. There was Super Zaxxon, which I think they've missed out here actually, but that was pretty much more of the same, whereas Zaxxon Mother Base was a kind of complete 3D update. Very good too. Reminded me a lot of Viewpoint actually, which I suppose did rip off Zaxxon. Congo Bongo, of course. I never particularly liked Congo Bongo, never cared for it. It was released as a kind of Donkey Kong rip-off, that's what many people called it. But the second level was actually a rip-off of Frogger, so it manages to rip off Donkey Kong and Frogger at the same time. But there's lots of home ports, and I actually covered the SG-1000 one on my channel recently, which is particularly interesting because it takes on a different perspective being 2D, and I actually prefer that version, to be honest. Up and Down, which is an okay kind of maze-ish game, but a lot of the home ports aren't very good, especially the Atari 2600 one, which is pretty god-awful. The perspective issues cause problems, I think, with a lot of the home ports. Then Safari Hunting, early game as well, which I think was released for the SG-1000 as well. Yes, it was. So again, that's very obscure, and they give up 2 pages to that, but not for Star Trek. Borderline, another fairly obscure one that was released for the SG-1000 as well, and also there is a kind of port for the 2600, which is Thunderground, which isn't a straight port. It kind of uses part of the game, which is, I guess, why they renamed it. Turbo, of course, another pretty famous early Sega game. That's the kind of forefather to the Super Scaler titles, because it was the first game where Sega started to play around with that kind of technology. Very, very impressive game for the time. They've looked at the arcade, Coleco, and Intellivision versions down there. They've got a screenshot of the 2600 version, just kind of stuck on the end there, which is strange, but they don't really mention it properly with the rest of the ports, which is strange. Buck Rogers, Planet of Zoom, or Zoom 909 as it was known in Japan. Another game that kind of was an early pioneer of that kind of super scalar look. Very impressive again for the time from a technical perspective. I really like Buck Rogers, and it got some really good home versions as well. So they show some of them there. I mean, the 2600 version is great. The Atari 8-bit version is really good. There's an excellent version for the Coleco Adam. So there's some really good versions of that game. Sub Rock 3D, not so well known, I suppose. but it did come out for the ColecoVision, and the Master System's Poseidon was 3D, I believe. You can get used to 3D glasses. Carnival, which I absolutely love. I've always been such a massive fan of Carnival. I first played it as a clone, actually, on the BBC Micro at school, and got so addicted to it playing it on the BBC Micros. And obviously, then later found out that it was an arcade game. I didn't know at that point, and that there was lots of different versions for it. So when I got Atari 2600, I bought it pretty much as soon as I saw it, because I love the game so much. So I played it to death on the 2600. But there's lots of home ports. But strangely, with that article, they don't show the home ports, which is really strange. They say some of the systems it came out on, and Atari 2600 Arcade, ColecoVision, and Television. There's more versions of that. There's an Atari 8-bit version for a start official port. So that's not mentioned. So it's strange how they've not gone into the home ports there, especially since it's a pretty popular game. Starjacker, quite obscure shoot 'em up, also came out for the SG-1000. Monster Bash, which I think they kind of adapted into what was it called? There was a Master System game. They kind of adapted it into that, I think. I can't think what that game's called now, and I can't see it mentioned there. Oh bloody hell! It's kind of Dracula game, but I can't think. For some reason, the name of it is totally escaping me. But it's a really good game. But it's based on Monster Bash. But for the life of me, I can't remember what it's called. Ghost House. That's what it's called. Sure, it is Ghost House. That was based on Monster Bash. Really good Master System game. Pengo, another classic. Lots of different versions of that. Do they look at the? Yeah, they do. There's tons of different versions you can see. The Atari 2600 version actually is brilliant. Really good. Probably one of the best arcade ports on the machine. Atari 8-bit version is really good. And there's obviously tons and tons of clones of Pengo. So many. And then there's the Mega Drive exclusive sequel, Papenga Pengo, which is also really, really good as well. So well worth looking at. More on that. God, they did quite a lot on Papengo. Sinbad, not a very well-known game at all there. Super Locomotive, again, not very well known, but they've devoted 2 pages to it. Unlike Star Trek, I know I keep going on about that, but it just seems so strange to give such a small amount of space to Star Trek. Ninja, which of course did come out for the Sega Master System as well, probably better known actually on the Sega Master System. There's some various versions there, the SG-1000 version as well. They are the Ninja, which is the Master System version. It's kind of an update, I suppose. And it looks like I've missed out a page, have I? No, I haven't. Spatter, which I've never even heard of before I got this book, I have to say. I'm Sorry, which I wasn't aware of at all until I saw this game either, but it looks very Japanese kind of title. Flicky, which I think most people are probably familiar with from the Mega Drive version, which seems strange really that they released that Mega Drive version because the game was pretty old by that point. Yeah, I mean, its original release was 1984. Of course, the Flickies do appear in Sonic the Hedgehog, so they did kind of get a cameo in that. But yeah, it does seem very strange that Flicky was resurrected for the Mega Drive, but it was, and it's very good as well. So there's some of the other versions, like there's an SG-1000 version, years before that, and for Japanese computers like the PC-88 and Fujitsu FM7. Teddy Boy, or Teddy Boy Blues, as it's also known. I really liked that game on the Master System. My friend had it. I used to play it quite a lot. The Master System version is a bit cut down, if I remember rightly. And there's a Mega Drive version as well, which I think, if I remember rightly, it was only released through like that SegaNet online service for the Mega Drive. Choplifter, which of course was one of the first computer games to be turned into an arcade game. The Broderbund computer game came first, and then Sega took it to the arcades and updated it and added loads of extra levels and extra bits and pieces to it. So they've covered some of the versions there, although not all of them, because there we've got arcade, Master System, SG-1000, Famicom, Apple II, ColecoVision, but also there's tons of other versions for home computers, unless they're over the page. No, so they've missed out absolutely loads of the versions there. Atari 7800, of course, is probably one of the better known versions that they've missed out there. Missed out loads of the ports. That seems strange to miss out so many of them. S.D.I, or Global Defence as it was called in the Master System. Not, I suppose, a that well known Sega game, but I've always loved S.D.I, and the first place I played it was actually on the ST. I bought the ST version and absolutely adored it on the ST. Played so much of it. And fantastic music on the ST as well. Activision did the port and it was really good. So down there we've got the ports: Arcade, Master System, Amiga, C64, CPC, ZX Spectrum, Spot What's Missing, Atari ST. So as is common with a lot of these Hardcore Gaming 101 books, they have once again forgotten that the ST exists. I think the Data East book, if I remember rightly, sort of remembered that the ST existed, and they did show some ST ones in that, ST ports in that one. But then all the others, like the Beat 'em Up book, didn't have ST in it. And this one doesn't have ST in it. I think so. The first Sega one didn't either. It's like it just completely ignored that the Atari ST exists, despite it being a really popular gaming platform back in the day. It's so strange. As I said, one of the authors must have something, something against the ST. He must be a real Amiga fanboy or something. My Hero, which is probably better known as a Master System game than an arcade game, to be honest. Flash Gal, which I've never heard of before I read this book, and UFO Senshi Yoko-chan, again, never heard of it before I got this book. Monaco GP, the original one. I have great memories of playing this at Butlins in Margate. Played loads of it there. Really good game. I really enjoyed Monaco GP back in the day. I remember seeing it around a lot, actually. Different arcades when I was a kid, very young kid. But didn't get many home ports. Came out for the SG-1000, but that's really the only official home port it got. There were lots of clones. There was lots of racing games like that. So I suppose it wasn't particularly original. And then, of course, the better-known Super Monaco GP, which was totally different, obviously being a 3D view, super scalar game, which got loads of home ports. So there they are there. Although some of those ports are quite substantially different, like the Master System one really doesn't look anything like the arcade game. Ditto the Game Gear, which they haven't shown there actually. Obviously they haven't shown the ST version because they like doing that. And it talks about the fact they nicked some of the artwork, just as they did with Thunderblade actually, the title screen being nicked from Blue Thunder. Some of the images of the women were nicked from, I think it was Playboy if I remember rightly. Super Hang-On, great game. Loved Super Hang-On in the arcades. Loved it on the ST. Actually, I had it on the Spectrum first. Loved it on the Spectrum. Loved it on the ST. And the Mega Drive version is even better still because it adds the extra career mode kind of thing where you can, update your bike and stuff like that. It's brilliant. The Mega Drive version is so good. It's so underrated. People don't talk about the Mega Drive version enough, I don't think. And so follow-ups. So you've got a GP Rider, Riding Hero, and Hang On GP on the Saturn, which I always thought was treated a bit harshly, actually. It's not the prettiest looking game, but it's actually pretty playable, but it didn't get very good reviews. Enduro Racer, no surprise to see that follow. Played a lot of that on the Spectrum, really enjoyed it on the Specky. Never had, they've shown the ST version. Wow, I was saying about them missing out the ST version, but they actually haven't for Enduro Racer. But I bet the only reason why they've actually included the ST there is because it never came out on the Amiga, which is really strange. It's one of those few games that came out for the ST but didn't come out for the Amiga. I think it's since been ported to the Amiga. Someone hacked the ST version and got it playing on the Amiga. But yeah, there is an official Atari ST version. They have shown it there. So, and the Masters version, of course, which is nothing like the arcade game. It's strange they even called it Enduro Racer, really. AB Cop, which I love, arcade exclusive. Such a shame they never did a Saturn port of that. Would have suited the Saturn so well. Perfect Saturn game it would have made. It's such a good game. Cool Riders, I vaguely remember that. Stadium Cross, don't remember that at all. Oh, that's the same game as Motocross on the 32X. Okay, played that version. Rapmobile, I love that on the Saturn. Okay, Gal Racer, really good Saturn game. really, and that's the first appearance, of course, by Sonic the Hedgehog, because he was hanging from the mirror, at the like a little mascot, and he appeared there first before he appeared in any game. It's the first time. So very historic for that reason. Hot Rod, I enjoyed that on the Spectrum actually. Activision did the port. I think they've shown the Hot Rod ports there, have they? No, they haven't. They've mentioned it came out in other formats, but they've not shown them, which is strange. Rough Racer, not familiar with that at all. Riot City, which I've played the I was going to say PC Engine version of that, but it's strange that Sega, because the only port of a Sega game was for the TurboGrafx CD, isn't it? Very, very strange. Never come out on any Sega platforms. It's an okay beat 'em up, nothing amazing. Tough Turf, which I have to say I've never played, which is surprising because I thought I played every beat 'em up, because I used to literally just go through MAME finding beat 'em ups to play all the time because it's my favourite genre. Burning Rival, can't say I've ever played that either. That's a kind of Street Fighter 2 style game. Arabian Fight, that's great. That is such a great beat 'em up with massive, massive sprites. Arcade exclusive again. That should have come out for the Saturn. Saturn was such a missed opportunity. There's so many games it could have brought out. There's Spider-Man. That's the arcade Spider-Man. Of course, there was the Mega Drive Spider-Man as well, which is similar but not the same. Dark Edge, which is I think it's a one-on-one fighter and not a very good one. DD Crew. I'm not familiar with that game at all. Never played that. Looks interesting though, because it's another scrolling beat 'em up by the looks of things. Disco Queen, or Zunzunkyu no Yabu. Okay, never played that. Never heard of it before either. Of course, Time Traveller, pretty famous as being sort of the only hologram arcade game. Looked amazing, played like crap, and all the units just broke down all the time. Uses holograms and laser discs. Apparently they were very, very expensive, the cabs, and very unreliable. So it wasn't a particularly big success, despite the fact you sort of saw it everywhere back then. Beirut, which is like a complete rip-off of Contra. It's not bad. What we've got there? Orail. Never heard of that or played it. There's some interesting ones interesting games in here that I must try out. Interview about that as well. Bonanza Brothers, which I'm very familiar with, mainly for the Mega Drive, but there was ports to lots of home systems, you can see. They have included the ST there. So some of the games they have decided towards the end of the book that they've remembered the ST existed, but at the beginning of the book they just ignored it completely. Okay. Trant R, whatever the hell that is. Sega Sonic the Hedgehog, isometric arcade game. Strange game. It's okay. I don't think it's that great though. Michael Jackson's Moonwalker, which of course is brilliant. But the arcade and the Mega Drive versions are totally different. Of course, there's a Master System version, which is like a cut down port for the Mega Drive. But I love Moonwalker. I've got so much nostalgia for it, especially the music on the Mega Drive version is so good. But the arcade game's even better. I actually wish they converted the arcade game to the Saturn, though it was quite old by that point, because it was such a good game. It really was brilliant. Last Survivor, which I'd never heard of, but I noticed as soon as I looked at it, I thought it looks like Zybots in its perspective, and they compare it to Zybots there actually, which I noticed as I was reading it. So they make that comparison as well. Columns, of course, the famous Sega puzzle game. That was their answer to Tetris. Very interesting story behind Columns. Won't go into it here, but I've actually covered it on the channel in a video. I did a video called The Story of the Real Tetris 2, which I covered that story in. Very, very interesting indeed. So I recommend watching that if you want to know more about it. All the many ports, obviously there's tons of ports and unofficial ones as well. The Sega version of Tetris, which is quite famous because the Mega Drive version is one of the rarest games for the system, because it was released and had to be withdrawn from sale almost immediately when it was discovered Sega didn't have the rights to release a home version. Only Nintendo did at that stage. They got exclusivity of it. Action Fighter. I loved that on the Spectrum, and I played it on the ST, and I played it on my friend's Master System. Very good game indeed, actually. I really like Action Fighter. Scramble Spirits. A decent shoot up, actually. I played it on the Spectrum. Never played any of the other versions, actually. I should sort that out. I keep meaning to play the ST version at some point, actually, and the Master System version, but never got around to it. I quite enjoyed it on the Spectrum, but it suffered from missing bullets syndrome because it was all in monochrome pretty much, which is annoying. Now, Sonic Boom is a game that I have enormous nostalgia for. It's not a very well-known Sega shooter, but I love it. I bought it on the Spectrum first, and it was brilliant on the Spectrum. But again, the monochrome made it suffer a little bit with the missing bullets. But it was just a really good shoot 'em up with excellent music on the 128K. Again, Activision Sega ports were excellent, and I loved it so much that when I upgraded to an ST, I bought it again for the ST. It was one of the games that I loved so much from the Spectrum. I bought the ST version. So it says here that it was converted to the Master System's Bomber Raid. I wasn't aware that they were the same game, to be honest. So that's interesting to know. I was not aware of that at all. Air Rescue, which is brilliant. It's kind of like an update of Choplifter in many ways, but uses a superscaler hardware. And it's all in 3D. But very, very good game. Very underrated. The Master System version is 2D though. It's completely different. Just uses the same name. Bullet, which I wasn't aware of before reading this book. Bank Panic, which I think is pretty well known because there's not just Bank Panic, but there was quite a few clones of the games like West Bank by Dynamic and stuff. Loads of home versions of Bank Panic. Good game. I enjoy Bank Panic. Laser Ghost. Again, I loved this in the arcades. When I was about, I think it must have been about 14 or 15, we went on holiday to Cornwall, and they had this arcade right by the hotel we were staying in, and they had Laser Ghost in there, and I probably played it more than any other game as that, and the other game I played loads was Starblade. Brilliant games. I've spent so much money on those two games. There's a Master System port of Laser Ghost as well, but it's nowhere near as good as the arcade game. Plays quite differently, and it's not a patch on the arcade game. Arcade's brilliant. Line of Fire, which is a pretty crap Operation Wolf rip-off. The arcade game was fairly impressive because it was super scalar, but the home versions of it were awful. US Gold did the home ports, and they were terrible, all of them. Especially the Spectrum version, though. The Spectrum version is horrendous. Rail Chase, which I can't say I've ever played. Kind of light gun game. Alien 3 The Gun, which is a great gun shooter back in the day, really good. And same with Jurassic Park, another great light gun shooter. And that was kind of updated in more recent years, I suppose, by Raw Thrills when they did their own Jurassic World arcade game, which is quite similar style, but very good. And then they've just kind of done this bit looking at sports games, which is kind of a bit of a shame that they've ignored some of those, because I do think some of those should have got a bit more attention, like Wrestle War, for example, which they show there, because obviously it's well known on the Mega Drive as well, so I think maybe they should have got a bit more attention. And then other games they didn't cover in detail, and again there's a few strange ones like Astro Blaster there, which you think they would have, they think they would have covered that in a bigger section because it's got quite a few home ports. It was a pretty successful game, so it seems strange that they didn't give that more space in this book. To be honest, I thought that was a strange one to sort of shove in the back there, and also as well Deep Scan there and its variants, because again that's a fairly well known one. I think should have got a bit more space. I wish I'd maybe just carried it over to another book. Time Scanner there, another one that I really love. Again, adored it on the Spectrum. I bought it on the ST. Another Activision Sega port that I absolutely loved. Deserved more space in here, I think. Soundtracks, board games, so sorted bits and pieces in the back there, and a little bit about all the writers and that. And the other books that are available. So there we go. That's actually showing some of them there. So the first Sega Arcade Classics, which I've got. Data East, which I've got. Taito Arcade Classics, which I've got. I haven't looked at it yet. Strider Bionic Commando. Castlevania, haven't got those ones. No. Graphic Adventures, not too interested in that. But I'll get the shoot 'em up books, definitely get those. I'll pick those up at some point because they sound really good. And that's it. So that's Sega Arcade Classics Volume 2. Another really good book from Retro Gaming 101. They're perhaps not as good as the others because, as you probably heard in the video, I had a few misgivings about some of the games that were included, some of the games that weren't included, or not they weren't included, because it's games that should have been given more space. So that was a bit strange in terms of some of the what was given space and what wasn't. Some really obscure stuff was given large sections, and some well-known stuff was, reduced to tiny little boxes, basically. But still a great book, still well worth getting. Just perhaps not as good as the first Sega book, but there we go. I've been the Laird. I thank you for watching, and hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll see you all again for another one very soon. Bye bye.